John McLeod stood at Beedick Summit, elevation 1,016 feet, somewhere beneath 7 meters of snow. He couldn't see his hands, not because of darkness, because they'd stopped being hands 2 hours ago. The rope around his waist pulled tight, 3 men ahead, 4 behind, all of them digging with coal shovels toward a train they could hear but couldn't see. 42 passengers, no heat, 6 hours buried. Standard procedure said, wait for specialized equipment. McLeod had other plans. In the next 14 hours, 8 men tied together with railway signal wire would move 600 cubic meters of snow using tools designed for coal, not ice. 0 fatalities. This is the story of how ordinary railway workers survived Britain's most extreme blizzard using nothing but rope, shovels, and the kind of stubbornness that doesn't appear in any manual. But first, you need to understand what led to March 5th, January 23rd, 1947. The snow started. It didn't stop for 55 days. Not a blizzard, a siege. By early March, Britain had been buried for 6 weeks straight. Coal mines frozen, railways paralyzed, cities running on emergency rations. The Ministry of Transport had deployed 47,000 troops just to keep major routes passable. It wasn't working. Scotland got hit worse than anywhere. The Highlands became a white desert. Villages cut off for weeks. Shepherds found frozen standing upright in drifts. Supply trains stopped running because there was nowhere to put the snow they cleared. They'd dig out a cutting, turn around, and find it filled again within hours. Then came March 4th. Meteorological records show what happened that day. A deep, low-pressure system stalled over the North Atlantic. Winds hit 80 miles per hour. Temperature dropped to minus 15 Celsius. The snow that had been falling steadily for 40 days turned into something else entirely. Horizontal, blinding, drifting at speeds that buried telegraph poles in minutes. The Waverley Line took the worst of it. This was the main railway corridor between Edinburgh and Carlisle. 98 miles of track through some of the most exposed terrain in southern Scotland, running through valleys that became wind tunnels, past hillsides that shed snow like avalanches, across moorland with nothing to stop the drifts from piling up. By nightfall on March 4th, the line was gone. Not blocked, gone. You couldn't tell where the tracks were. Entire cuttings filled level with the surrounding landscape, signals buried to their arms, station platforms hidden under smooth white slopes that looked like hills, 7 meters deep in places. That's 23 feet. Height of a 2-story building. John McLeod was 34, railway maintenance supervisor, based at Beedick Station, halfway up the line's steepest gradient. He'd worked Scottish railways for 16 years, seen bad winters. This wasn't bad. This was biblical. The call came in at 2:48 a.m. on March 5th. Passenger train stuck between Beedick and Elvenfoot. Last radio contact at 10:15 p.m. Signal at milepost 52 showed occupied, but wasn't getting responses. McLeod knew what that meant. The train was there. Whether anyone on it was still alive was another question. He assembled a team. 8 men. That's what showed up when he asked for volunteers. Railway workers, signalmen, a coal tender, 1 apprentice who'd started the week before. Average age 41. None of them had Arctic gear because none of them owned Arctic gear. They wore what they always wore: wool coats, flat caps, work boots. 3 had gloves. McLeod wasn't one of them. The equipment list tells you everything about what they expected. 8 coal shovels, 1 medical kit, 200 feet of signal wire, 6 kerosene lamps, 2 thermoses of tea. No radio, no backup, no specialized rescue equipment because there wasn't any. Just men and shovels and a general sense that someone had to do something. They left at 3:20 a.m. Visibility near zero. Wind strong enough to knock a man down if he wasn't braced. The plan was simple. Follow the track bed north. Find the train. Dig it out. Get everyone back before they froze. Simple plans rarely survive contact with 7-meter drifts. McLeod tied them together with the signal wire. 4-meter intervals, waist height. If someone went down, the others would feel it. If someone got disoriented in the whiteout, the rope kept them connected. Basic mountaineering technique adapted for railway work. It saved 3 lives before they even reached the train. The walking was impossible, not difficult. Impossible. Snow to mid-chest in the shallow parts, overhead in the drifts. Packed so hard from wind compression it took both hands to drive a shovel in. McLeod described it later as walking through concrete that also froze your legs. They made 400 meters in the first hour, 4:17 a.m. They heard it, steam whistles, faint, muffled by snow, but unmistakable. The train was alive. Someone was signaling. McLeod estimated distance by sound, maybe 200 meters ahead. Could have been less, could have been more. Snow plays tricks with acoustics. That's when the real work started. They couldn't just walk to the train. The drift between them and the signal was too deep. Solid wall of snow higher than their heads. Only one option, dig a trench. McLeod put 4 men on the face, 4 on clearance, rotating every 15 minutes because that's how long you could swing a shovel in sub-zero wind before your arms stopped working. The math was brutal. 7-meter drift, 2 meters wide for safety, 200 meters long. That's 2,800 cubic meters of snow. 8 men, coal shovels, no machinery. They dug for 9 hours straight. The technique was primitive but effective. Front man drives the shovel in high, breaks the face, steps back. Second man scoops the broken snow, tosses it behind. Third and fourth men shovel it further back, building walls on either side. Every 15 minutes, rotate. New men to the face, exhausted men to the rear. McLeod kept them working by keeping them angry. Every time someone slowed down, he'd remind them about the 42 people on that train. Children probably. Old people definitely, sitting in unheated carriages for 8 hours. You slow down, they die. Simple equation. The apprentice, Thomas Drummond, 19 years old, collapsed twice, kept getting back up. Years later, he said the only thing that kept him moving was shame. Everyone else still working. How could he stop? At 9:30 a.m., they broke through. The trench reached the train, or what they could see of it, just the top third of the carriages. Everything below window level was buried, packed snow against the doors, ice coating every surface, but lights on inside. Movement. People alive. Getting them out was harder than reaching them. The doors wouldn't open, snow pressure too great. McLeod tried the windows, frozen shut. Finally used a shovel edge to crack the glass on the third-class carriage. Faces appeared, pale, shaking, conscious. That was good. 42 passengers, 6 crew, all ambulatory. No one had frozen yet, though several were close. McLeod's plan was direct. Walk them out through the trench. Single file, rope between each person. Move fast before body heat dropped further. Get them to Beedick Station, 7 miles south. Might as well have been 70. But the wind had other plans. While they'd been digging, the drift behind them had been filling. Not completely, but enough. The trench they'd cut was now only 1.5 meters deep in places, still passable but deteriorating. McLeod made a calculation. Get the passengers out now in bad conditions, or wait for good conditions that might never come. He chose now. They roped everyone together. 8 railway workers, 48 evacuees, 1 continuous line 4 meters between each person, McLeod at the front, Drummond at the rear. Instructions were simple. If the person ahead falls, you stop and hold. If you fall, you signal. No one gets left behind because no one can get left behind. You're all literally tied together. The march started at 10:05 a.m., temperature -13, wind 65 miles per hour, visibility maybe 20 meters on good stretches. They had 7 miles to cover, in snow that had already killed 11 people elsewhere in Scotland that week. McLeod set a pace. Slow, steady, rest every 500 meters, check every person, make sure no one was getting hypothermic, make sure the rope stayed taut, make sure people kept moving because stopping meant freezing. They reached Beedick Station at 5:43 p.m., 7 hours and 38 minutes, 7 miles. All 56 people alive, 3 with frostbite, 1 with a broken ankle from falling in the trench. But alive. The temperature that night hit -21. The train they'd evacuated was completely buried by morning, invisible beneath smooth snow that showed no sign anything was underneath. McLeod's rescue wasn't unique. It was typical. Across Scotland that week, railway workers were doing the same thing, manually digging out buried trains, clearing tracks with shovels because there was no other option. working in clothes that offered almost no protection because specialized gear didn't exist for civilian railway crews. The Waverly Line alone had 17 trains stuck between March 4th and 8th, all of them evacuated by hand. 0 passenger fatalities. That's not luck. That's 200-plus railway workers in inadequate clothing doing impossible work because the alternative was unacceptable. But Scotland wasn't done. March 10th, Fylingdales, North York Moors. 20 railway maintenance workers had been clearing snow from a remote section of track when another blizzard hit. Not as severe as March 4th, severe enough. They got trapped, cut off, no way out. Signal wire reached the local station. They were alive but stranded in a maintenance shed with 3 days of food and no heat. Standard procedure said wait for ground rescue. The Royal Air Force had other plans. This was 1947. Helicopters were experimental. The Sikorsky R-4 had only entered service 3 years earlier. Maximum capacity 3 people. Range 130 miles. Operating ceiling 2,400 meters. Not designed for mountain rescue. Not designed for blizzard conditions. Definitely not designed for what the RAF was about to ask it to do. Flight Lieutenant James Hutchinson flew the mission. 2 trips. 10 workers per trip. Conditions were barely flyable. Wind gusting to 50 miles per hour. Snow reducing visibility to almost nothing. Landing zone was just a cleared patch next to the shed, surrounded by drifts. One mistake meant crashing into snow that would bury the helicopter in seconds. Hutchinson made 4 approaches before successfully landing, got 10 men loaded, lifted off in conditions that technically exceeded safety limits, did it again 2 hours later for the second group. 20 men rescued, 0 casualties. It was Britain's first helicopter mountain rescue, proved helicopters could do things ground teams couldn't, changed search and rescue doctrine permanently, and it happened because railway workers needed saving from snow. March 14th brought the final record. Forest in Teesdale. Small village in County Durham. Population maybe 300. Elevation 425 meters. Not particularly high, not particularly remote, just unlucky. The snow there had been accumulating since January 23rd. No melt, no thaw, just 50 days of continuous precipitation in temperatures that kept everything frozen, compacting, building, layer upon layer. At 2 p.m. on March 14th, a meteorological office surveyor named Arthur Dobson took a measurement. Standard snow depth probe, 6-meter rod. He drove it down through the snowpack outside the village. It went in 210 centimeters before hitting ground. That's 6 feet 10 inches. Deepest snow depth ever recorded in an inhabited location in the United Kingdom. Record still stands. Dobson's report describes the conditions. Snow compressed so tightly at the bottom that it was nearly ice. Surface still soft enough to drift. Buildings in the village buried to their roofs. Roads completely invisible. Telegraph poles showing maybe 2 feet above the surface. The village survived on emergency airdrops, food, coal, medical supplies. Small aircraft would make low passes and kick out crates with parachutes. Hit rate maybe 60%. The rest buried in snow, hopefully to be found during the spring thaw. Forest in Teesdale stayed cut off for 3 more weeks. The snow finally started melting in early April. By then, Britain had experienced 69 consecutive days of snow cover, longest on record. The toll was staggering. Official estimates say the winter of 1947 killed between 1,500 and 4,000 people in the UK, mostly elderly, mostly from cold-related illness rather than direct exposure. Coal shortages meant no heat. Food shortages meant weakened immune systems. Impassable roads meant no medical care. The economic damage was worse. 150 million pounds in 1947 currency. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly 6 billion pounds today. Agriculture devastated. Sheep losses in Scotland exceeded 30% in some regions. Spring planting delayed by weeks. Food rationing extended into 1948. But the human cost wasn't measured in statistics. It was measured in men like John MacLeod digging through 7-meter drifts with coal shovels because someone had to. The railway workers who cleared the Waverly Line received no medals, no official recognition. The government was too overwhelmed dealing with national crisis to track individual acts of heroism. McLeod went back to work the next week. Same job, same pay, different understanding of what impossible meant. Thomas Drummond, the 19-year-old apprentice, worked for British Rail until retirement in 1985. He kept one of the coal shovels from March 5th, hung it in his garage, told his grandchildren about the night they walked 7 miles through a blizzard tied together with signal wire. James Hutchinson's helicopter rescue at Fylingdales became a case study. The RAF used it to develop mountain rescue protocols. By 1950, helicopters were standard equipment for isolated emergencies. By 1960, they were saving dozens of lives annually. The 20 railway workers he pulled out of North York Moors never knew their rescue-changed doctrine. Arthur Dobson's snow depth measurement at Forest in Teesdale went into the record books. 210 centimeters. It's been challenged several times. Never beaten. The sign at the village entrance still mentions it. Deepest snow in Britain, March 14th, 1947. The Waverley Line recovered. Took until May to clear all the accumulated snow. Took until June to repair all the frost damage. Trains started running again in July. By August, it was like March had never happened. Except everyone who worked the line remembered. March 1947 proved something important about crisis response. When systems fail, when equipment doesn't exist, when conditions exceed every planning parameter, what matters is people willing to do unreasonable things. Digging 200 meters through 7-meter drifts with coal shovels is unreasonable. Walking 48 evacuees 7 miles in -13 temperatures is unreasonable. Flying experimental helicopters in 50-mile-per-hour winds is unreasonable. Recording snow depth when you're cut off from civilization is unreasonable. But that's what happened. Not because these men were exceptional, because the situation demanded it, and they were there. John McLeod died in 1973. His obituary in the local paper mentioned his 38 years with British Rail. It didn't mention March 5th, 1947. No one remembered to ask. The men he saved scattered to different cities, lost touch, never organized a reunion. It wasn't that kind of story. The snow melted. The trains ran again. Britain rebuilt. But for 1 week in March 1947, when Scotland's mountains were buried 7 meters deep and standard procedures meant nothing, ordinary railway workers in inadequate clothing did extraordinary work. They saved 42 lives with rope and shovels and stubbornness. The math was simple. 7 meters of snow. 8 men. No choice. They dug.